You wrote an extensive 45-page outline for your first feature, Four Dogs, and then you wrote a 30-page outline for your second feature, Burt. Can you teach us about your outlining process?
Yeah. My first two features, Four Dogs and Burt, were done very similarly. It's essentially me and my buddy Oliver Cooper, who I write and produce these movies with, and we're dear friends growing up in Ohio, and anyways, worked together a bunch. We love this idea of sort of incorporating sort of real people mixed with professional actors and kind of creating this sort of personal world that we build. And it's always sort of inspired by the real person at first. So for example, Four Dogs, that was my first feature. Oliver was living with his aunt. He just moved to LA a year prior. And his Aunt Becca, Rebecca Goldstein, and her four dogs in this house in Encino where she grew up. And we just had this epiphany of like, there's a movie here. There's a really beautiful, heartfelt movie. And to capture his real life aunt and their relationship at this moment and this time, Oliver had a big movie that he had shot for Warner Brothers called Project X. Crazy story, his first audition in his life, books this lead role, first audition ever, books a lead role for Warner Brothers movie. They had shot it, Todd Phillips produced it. It had not come out yet. It was delayed 1 year to come out. So we had 1 year of basically this little window of time to capture Oliver before he kind of maybe had a little bit of a skyrocket career. And I wanted to capture this innocence. So we had this idea to shoot this movie with him and his Aunt Becca, but we didn't want to overly script it. We wanted to keep it loose in the sense that, Becca, his aunt, was not an actress. And so there's a lot of factors that we just like, all right, let's figure out the movie, but let's keep it loose enough that we can kind of let it be its thing. And Burt, very similarly, was a movie that this guy, Burt Berger, singer-songwriter, I met at a restaurant in Malibu years ago, playing music table to table, and fell in love with this guy over the years, got to know him, and like, eventually I was just like, me and Oliver was like, we got to make a movie with this guy, Burt. He's just like, his optimism, his beautiful soul, his music, everything about this guy was like, this person is special. He's a rare type of person. And we brought him into our world on a short film first, and that went really well. And then we kind of got to know him more and more, and I got to sit down with him every 3 to 6 months, and for like 5 years hang out with them, and like eventually we got to the point where it was like, we got to make a movie. And so the writing process with Burt as well is like, his roommate Stephen Levy and Burt, these two guys who live together for real in this house, where the main character's mixed with Oliver, who's a professional actor playing Burt's son in the movie. And so we, again, did not want to have too much dialogue sort of scripted for these guys to learn. We wanted to kind of know all the beats of the movie. So me and Oliver and my cinematographer, Daniel, Kenji Levin, knew exactly what we had to do, but we never had Burt and Steve read the outline. They never saw the script. They never saw anything. Same with Becca on Four Dogs. We never had the people who were bringing into the fold read anything because we didn't want them to influence them too much. We wanted them to kind of be themselves in an environment that I guess you could just use the word, sort of manipulate or whatever in terms of like, as a director does, just like kind of create a world where they succeed. And so me and Oliver, knowing the story beats and everything that we needed to get, we were able to kind of set it up in a way where all they had to do was sort of take my direction and be themselves, and it would work. And so it's also like, I don't know. I mean, there's a magic to it. I mean, I've written many scripts. I have a couple scripts I'm writing now that like, 100-page screenplay, word for word. I'd love to make it. Would be great. But there's something really magical about also having this process where we're living off this outline with these real people and kind of pivoting and letting the journey of the filmmaking process sort of have a bigger role in the process than you may normally have on like a more scripted thing. But also, I'm a big stickler on beats, especially on Burt. I was like, my first feature, Four Dogs, that was years ago, was a little looser, more voyeuristic, kind of a little quieter of a movie. But Burt's a very plot-driven film, actually, as you saw it. And so there was very specific beats and storylines that we had to make sure happened. So I'm a big stickler on beats. If we have the beats, we know exactly what the scene's about and how it helps move the story forward. Everything else can be kind of this nuanced texture from the actors sort of, I don't want to say improvising fully because it's partially improvised, but like it's also conversations that we've had with them off screen already that we're like, hey, Burt, remember that conversation about, what's it like to get older? He's like, oh, you pee more often. I'm like, yeah, we're gonna have that conversation in this scene now. And so like, he's like, got it. And so like, it's sort of like, it's this weird thing where we're kind of like capturing the beauty of these actual people while also bringing them into like a narrative movie. It's interesting.
How do you actually come up with the beats?
Yeah, it's great. So the best way to answer this process of this, and I'll talk about Burt specifically because that's the most recent one that I feel like is a little bit more specific in the plot points. I'm basically, with Oliver on this one, we're basically writing the script in like a Word document. So it's not a final draft document. We're not writing every line of dialogue, but we are writing every beat. So when you write a screenplay, as you know, like I mean, every scene there's beats all over the place, right? And so you can't write a good screenplay if you don't hit the beats in the right place and yada yada. So we're doing that work. I mean, we spent, we had a couple different versions of what this movie is going to be. So I wrote one version of this and this and this. And like, these are very rich outlines. I mean, the only thing that's sort of missing is I'm not taking the outline and then transcribing it into a final draft form over the next couple days. Like, I could do that with these. So it's like, it's that detailed, but it also takes away a little pressure on me of having to like make the script just read perfectly. No one's reading this but me and Oliver and our cinematographer. So I don't have to present this to the studio. I don't have to present this to even the actors. They're not reading it. So as long as I understand the story beats of the scene, and when I say beats, I mean I have to know what the scenes are. I have to know, it's just like anyone who's writing anything. You have to just know the emotional through line. You have to know the setups and payoffs. You have to know where the movie starts, where the movie ends. The midpoint, the break into two. The bad guys close in, the catalyst, the da da da. I mean, it's all there. The save the cat stuff, right? Which I love, right? It's like it's all there. It's just done in a way where, frankly, I can move a little quicker because I don't have to worry about polishing this screenplay to look gorgeous. When really, it's like, okay, it's. I know the beats. I got everything here. It's our map. It's our blueprint. It's our roadmap. We can make this movie. If we're on set tomorrow, we would do a good job because it's all figured out. And that's the part where it's like, okay, it's figured out. Let's go. As opposed to, all right, it's figured out. Now let's just write the drafts and get all the little dialogue perfect and get all the feedback and notes and this and that. And that's a whole nother maybe a year or two of your time. I don't know. So we avoid that part. Just do this part and then run.
Why don't you like to write the full script?
I do like writing full scripts. In these particular cases, the reason why I really don't when I'm working with sort of these non-actors, if you will, it's just because like it's sort of not necessary. It feels like it's almost like work that like just doesn't. It's not going to add much more. It might actually take away. It might actually take away because now I'm kind of focusing on maybe how the script is presented in a final draft format and thinking about lines that these guys would maybe say, and I'd probably get pretty close to writing good stuff for them, but then it's like, okay, if I'm gonna have a full script, then I have to give them the script. They have to see the lines. They have to learn the lines. Now they have to, and now they're not just being themselves. Like the magic that I'm trying to capture is a little gone because maybe, let me take a step back. There's no reason for me to write a full script if we're not going to use it, right? So if I'm not planning on actually giving them a script to actually learn lines and read and digest and then, deliver the lines on set, if I'm not planning to have that be the approach, then there's no reason to do that work. My time is more spent maybe doing rehearsals, doing whatever else. There's a million, also on these micro-budget films, I'm doing the makeup, I'm doing the production design, I'm the AD, I'm doing call sheets. I mean, it was literally a 3-person crew number. It was me, my cinematographer, Daniel Kunji-Levin, and Rob Spence, our sound guy. That was it for the whole 7-day shoot. And then, of course, Oliver and I producing it, Oliver acting. But so it's just, hopefully that makes sense.
And going back to what we talked about in a previous segment about how so much of Hollywood is waiting.
Yeah.
And so that would just bog it down. And if for anybody who sees the film, the dialogue is supernatural and, I don't want to give too much away.
And also one trick on Burt, and people ask, how were you able to shoot a feature film in 7 days like this? The secret sauce was 2 cameras, right? We just borrowed cameras from our friends. We had 2 cameras rolling on all the conversations, cross-shooting. So we have a camera on Burt, we have a camera on Oliver, or whoever the 2 characters are in the scene. And so when they're delivering this, when they're having this conversation, we're shooting both angles at the same time. I edit all my own films. I love editing. It's my favorite part of the process. So I can take that footage and I can build the scenes in post, which I did a lot with this. And so having the 2 cameras allowed us to kind of keep the natural dialogue. And Oliver, who's acting in the scene with these guys, one of the writers as well, knows the mission, right? So if Oliver's there and he knows what we have to get out of the scene, he can sort of say a line that might tee Burt up or Steve up or whoever's in the scene with, he knows the mission. He knows what he knows what kind of reaction we have to get out of this. And also, and Oliver would say this on set, he's like, Joe, you're kind of like the third actor in the scene with us because I'm behind the camera sometimes saying, hey, Burt, say this, repeat after me, say this. And, there's a beauty in working with actors who are so free or someone who's just like, yeah, sure, no problem. I'll see whatever you want. And it's just like, I can't imagine, there's some actors like, I'm not saying that. My character would never say this or da-da-da. And it's like, all right, and I mean, and that's fine. I've worked that way too, but like, there's something really nice about someone just like so joyful and ready to just do it. Let's just do it. Let's just have some fun and let's have options. Like, One more thing I'll say on the editing is like, I love having options. I don't like overshooting. That's a different thing. But I like having options. If that camera's rolling, right, I'll give Burt an idea of like, hey, Burt, give me, like, say this line, say this one, say this one. Great, now I got 3 options and cut. Great, in about 10 seconds, I have 3 options I can use in the editing room to kind of, again, build the scene in post to figure out what makes the most sense. Because of the nature that we're making these movies, there's still a little flexibility in designing the full structure in the editing room. So as opposed to maybe your earlier question of like, why not write the full script? The edit is the full script, right? It's sort of like the editing of this style of filmmaking, the edit becomes that final script. And I know it's most movies, but really in this particular case, because you got these building blocks that you kind of are moving around, and then you can kind of craft these sort of performances that are half improvised, half scripted, but all the beats are there.
Okay, so that makes sense because you're talking about building it in post, and I'm thinking of the cliche, you can fix it in post, which you can't always do.
Right.
So that's like a different way of looking at it. Is you're
Totally.
building it, not fixing it. Okay.
I like to call it building movies. I like to build a movie, you know, and my dear friend Dustin Bowser, filmmaker friend of mine, he's big in post as well. Like we refer to it as building a movie, where it's like you have all the pieces, you're in the editing room, and now it's like, you know, it's like building a house, right? You got the bricks and the concrete and the this and the da, and let's put it together. And I mean, obviously a house, you have a blueprint, but like, and I never built a house, so maybe it's like exactly what the, okay, fair enough. Maybe that doesn't quite work. But like, I look at it as building a movie. I really do, and I love that process, and I like flexibility in that. I really do. I like a little bit of like, you know, I love the music in Burt, the score. Our composer,
right.
Tim Rutilli, who did a wonderful job. All live instruments, brought his musicians in, and you know, trumpet and all this stuff. Beautiful music, but like, discovering what the score was even going to be before I even hired him onto the project, of like building this movie in post in the editing room, aka my bedroom, and cutting this movie and like using some temp tracks, some other stuff, and kind of realizing, oh, I can actually have a music cue here, and I can have something here. And this and the score really shaped this movie for me. And then when I presented it to Tim, and he watched it and fell in love with it, and like we kind of ran with, you know, sort of like really embracing a lot of music in this movie that became another character. It's just like that. Even that came across in the process of editing and building the movie in the post editing room a little bit more than I had anticipated. So that's like one example.
Can you name any other filmmakers who only outline and never write a full screenplay?
Can I name some filmmakers who only outline? Nothing's coming to mind, right? I'm sure I could think about it. Who only outline? I mean, I know some people who are like big in the improv, and it's different what I'm doing. They're actually doing like real like improv, like a friend of a friend who's overseas. His whole thing is like he gathers a collective of actors. They come together for like 7 to 10 days where he lives, and they kind of like one day at a time figure out a movie. And it's really not scripted, but it's fun for them, and he's had some success. And when you work that way, sometimes you'll have one like, wow, this actually worked, and it plays South by, and it does great. And then you have some that's like, they don't even get finished because it's like, you know, after the week, they're like, yeah, it's not really a movie. It's sort of like a bunch of scenes, but what's the through line? And maybe they move on. They're not overly expensive, and it's not really time consuming, so he can kind of get away with that. That's like one example of someone I know. But in terms of like sort of this 30-page outline, I mean, I bet there are. I'm sure there's a lot of actors, a lot of directors who do work this way, but I'm trying to think I can't think of a name right now.
Okay, fair enough. How much conflict do you write into your outlines?
A lot. I write a lot of conflict in my outlines. I want every scene to have conflict, even if it's like, you know, a guy going to the bathroom and he goes to reach for the toilet paper and it's empty. You know, it's like always there's got to be something that kind of gives the character a little struggle of some kind. Right, that's ideal. Obviously, not every single scene is going to have anything crazy like that. But yeah, I think that you want to have conflict from characters. You want to have a character start one scene here and end the scene here, even if it's like, you know, they wake up and stretch and then slowly get out of bed and step on the dog's toy and hurt their foot and walk to the bathroom, right? Just whatever it is, right? It's just a little something. Beginning, middle, and end. Every scene, every moment should really have a beginning, middle, and end. Obviously, the major scenes will, of course, and that is conflict, right? It's the character struggling to kind of accomplish a goal or kind of come against some obstacles. So we're always looking for that, even if it's the smallest thing, like, you know, turn on the sink too hard and the water splashes up and you got to turn it off and, you know, wipe it off and then walk out. It's just like a little something. Obviously, I lean towards comedy, but my comedy comes from a truthfulness and a groundedness. So I love humor, but I never want it to be silly to unrealistic point, right? It's funny because it's true, right? They're always playing that world. It's funny because it's true. And so, but with that mentality, that's where we always put a little conflict at the smaller levels, and in the bigger levels, like real conflict of characters with different opinion or different objectives.
At one point in the film, you have a trailer park. Where did you find that trailer park?
What we did for the trailer in the movie Burt is we were thinking we wanted to have the one of the characters live in a trailer, tiny little budget. Oliver had the brilliant idea of let's go on Craigslist and go to trailers for rent. And so we found a trailer park that was renting a trailer. We called the woman who runs the facility. We're like, hey, we're not looking to rent a trailer, but we're wondering if you could maybe just pay some money for one day just to film a trailer on your property. She's like, well, drive out here. So we drove out to El Monte, and we got there, and the one place that she was renting actually was sort of this, like, it actually wasn't a trailer proper. It was like a little house on the property, and it was empty, and it was fine, but it wasn't what we wanted. We wanted to have like an Airstream trailer, and so we're like, we're actually looking for this, and she's like, you know what? There's someone, maybe Donna in the back would be interested. So we walk back there, and she's like, hey, Donna, and you hear this little voice, yeah? These two guys want to make a movie in your trailer. Okay. And so she pops out, and she's this wonderful, lovely little woman, and we're like, hey, we introduce ourselves, and she's like, yeah, no problem. And so like we decided, she's like, let us shoot there. We pay her a little bit of money. She's like, all I want, a little bit of money, that's fine. We'll give her a little bit of money. She's like, and bring me some DVDs, because I want to watch some movies, because she has a big screen TV in her place with a bunch of DVDs. So we're like, deal. So we brought her like, whatever, 25 DVDs that we own that I don't watch anymore. So here's a bunch of DVDs. And I go, Donna, if you don't mind, would you mind being in the movie too? She's like, sure. And so she plays the landlord. For those of you who've seen Burt or watched Burt, she plays the landlord in this one scene, and she's wonderful.
Wonderful.
Just so
I love
good,
her.
and she's actually in the trailer as well. If you watch the trailer, and so anyways, it was those little things where we had to get creative on how to shoot this little movie and incorporate everyone involved. And I'll give you, if I may, one more quick little story about Burt. One of the opening scenes, the first scene we shot of the whole movie, actually on production day, scene one, Burt's neighbor, a guy named Mikey, was on his bike riding by the house.
Yes.
And we're like, Burt, who's that? Oh, that's Mikey. Does he want to be in the movie? I'll ask him. And that's my Burt impression. And so Burt goes over and talks to Mike. He's like, he said no. And my buddy Oliver's like, no, this guy's got to be in the movie. He's too good. So we're like, hey, man, we're making this movie to honor Burt's life. It would take 10 minutes of your time. Would you mind just one scene? He's like, yeah, sure, why not? So we signed the actor release form. And we're like, okay, start there, ride your bike up, and just say, hey, Burt, he's going to introduce you to his son. And we shot this little scene in like 15 minutes. And got the wide shot, single, that was it. And it's a part of the trailer. It's one of my favorite scenes in the movie. And it just elevated the whole thing. And it was the first day of shooting. And it was like those little magical moments that we wanted to be able to capture. And that, back to the script stuff, which is why I don't need to write the full script, because the full script's actually not the roadmap for this type of project. The outline with all the beats is this roadmap for this type of project, because it allows us to easily incorporate these great little movie magic moments that pop up in our routine, and then that's where the magic is for this style of filmmaking.
Do you think if you wrote the entire script, it would actually make the story worse?
If I wrote the entire script, would it make the story worse? That's an interesting thought. I don't want to say it would make the story worse, because I feel like that doesn't feel like it rings for me. It could make the process a little more, make like the magic less available. The magic that we're trying to capture on set less available if we are kind of living off this specific 100-page professional screenplay, word for word, line for line, so to speak. Because then we start having conversations about, well, this script says this, but we're saying, and it's like, then we start kind of like figuring out, like, it's just going to take up some real precious time. Again, we're making this movie in 7 days, right? 7 days to shoot a feature, 3-person crew. We don't have time to waste. And so I don't think that I think it would not make the story worse, but I don't think it will add a lot in this particular type of process, like I'm saying. So we'll find out. We'll find out on the next one. I might maybe write, we'll find out, but.
Well, the dialogue was so natural, and so I don't know if that, lends itself to keeping it loose, but...
The way Burt and Steve speak in real life is so great and wonderful and entertaining, and I like acting, talking like Burt, because Burt is just such a beautiful person. Like he talks in such a poetic, cool, chill way. He's got this vibe. He moved to LA in 1977. He, smokes pot and plays guitar, and he's just that guy. And he's just such a beautiful optimism to life. And like, I never want to put words in his mouth that are supposed to be words from his heart. The words I put into his mouth were words that kind of were more to help drive the story forward when necessary. But in terms of like getting to it's like, partially it has the DNA of a documentary in the sense that like we want to capture these real people in their actual house. That's the part that's like super real. And then we're making the narrative stuff on the side. So I didn't want to do anything to influence the magic or the spirit of these real people. It was my goal to make sure that they came across as authentically themselves and real as we could. And so that's the process for this one.
Sure. And I don't know them personally, but to me, it came across that
No,
way, so you did an excellent job.
Thank you. Their mannerisms and their lines and their chemistry. Again, Burt and Steve, real life roommates for 12 years in this like absolutely beautiful, insane, real life odd couple mentality. I'm not going to mess with that.
Thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. Here is a complimentary question from our book Story Questions.